The bird you eat at Christmas cannot have sex. Not will not, cannot. The commercial turkey has been bred with a breast so large that the male physically cannot reach the female. Every single one of the hundreds of millions produced each year exists because a human being did it by hand, with a syringe. There is no other farmed bird on Earth where this is standard practice. And it cannot fly, and by the end it can barely walk. Now here is the same animal in the wild. A wild turkey flies in bursts at about 80 kilometers an hour, runs at 40, sleeps in the tops of trees, sees across almost 300 degrees in color, and hears a footstep from a long way off. It is one of the hardest animals in North America to hunt. Same species. We changed one of them in about 70 years. So, 100 facts about the turkey. What the wild bird actually is. The mind we never bothered looking for. What we did to the farmed version and how fast. Why it is named after a country it has never lived in. And the strangest conservation story in America. Here you get the bird the way the studies describe it, rather than the way the joke does. Subscribe and we begin. One thing I owe you up front. Everybody has heard that turkeys are so stupid they drown looking up at rain. There is a real explanation underneath that story, and it is better than the story. It comes later. Fact 1. There are two species, the wild turkey across North America, and the ocellated turkey, which lives only in the Yucatan and is among the most spectacular birds on the continent. Iridescent blue-green with a blue head covered in orange nodules. Fact 2. Only the first one was ever domesticated. Everything in every supermarket descends from it. Fact 3. Turkeys are theropod dinosaurs, in the same way every bird is. If you want the closest thing to a dinosaur on your dinner table, it is the drumstick. Fact 4. A male is a tom or a gobbler, a female is a hen, a baby is a poult, and a teenage male is a jake. A group is a flock, or, more properly, a rafter. Fact 5. Wild toms weigh 8 to 11 kilograms. Hens are around half that. Commercial toms are commonly slaughtered at 19 or 20 and can reach much more. Fact 6. The wild bird is fast in a way people find hard to believe. It can hit around 40 kilometers an hour running and roughly 80 in a short burst of flight. Fact 7. It cannot sustain that. Turkey flight is explosive and brief. Enough to reach a branch or clear a ridge, not enough to migrate. Fact 8. Every night, wild turkeys fly up into trees to sleep and stay there until dawn. A 5-kilogram bird crashing up into a canopy at dusk is a genuinely startling thing to witness. Fact 9. They do that because they are effectively blind at night. Turkey eyes are built for daylight and have almost no night vision. So they get above the ground before dark and do not come down until they can see. Fact 10. In daylight, the vision is exceptional. Their eyes sit on the sides of the head, giving a field of view of roughly 270 degrees. A slight turn of the head takes that to full coverage. Fact 11. They see in color, including into the ultraviolet, which is outside our range completely. Hunters wear specialized camouflage because ordinary clothing, and anything washed in detergent with brighteners in it, is to a turkey extremely obvious. Fact 12. What they cannot do is judge depth well. Their eyes point outward rather than forward, so the two images barely overlap. That is why a turkey tilts its head sideways to inspect something. It is swapping eyes. Fact 13. Their hearing is better than ours at picking out direction and low frequencies, without any external ear at all. A turkey can locate a sound in a forest to a startling degree of precision. Fact 14. The sense they barely have is smell. Turkeys have very little olfactory ability, which is the one crack in the defenses and the reason hunting them is possible at all. Fact 15. An adult wears roughly 5,000 to 6,000 feathers arranged in tracks across the body, and the dark plumage carries a metallic iridescence, bronze, copper, green, gold, that only shows in direct light. Now the head, which is the strangest piece of equipment on any farm bird. Fact 16. The fleshy flap hanging over a male's beak is called a snood. The one under the chin is the wattle. The bumpy growths on the neck are caracundles. Fact 17. The snood is not fixed. It changes length. Relaxed, it sits short and shrunken over the beak. When a male displays, blood fills it, and it extends downward, sometimes past the beak entirely. Fact 18. And it is doing real work. Richard Buchholz ran mate choice trials and found that females consistently preferred males with longer snoods, choosing them even from artificial models where nothing else differed. Fact 19. The reason is that the snood is honest. Buchholz found longer snooded males carried fewer coccidia, intestinal parasites that do not much harm adults but can kill chicks. Snood length is a public advertisement of a male's disease resistance. Fact 20. It works on other males too. When two toms size each other up, the one with the shorter snood frequently backs down without a fight, which saves both of them an injury. Fact 21. The head changes color. Red, white, and blue, in shifting patches, changing within seconds according to the bird's state. Excited, aggressive, calm, courting, frightened. All of it written on the skin in real time, for any other turkey to read. Fact 22. That color change happens because the head is bare. There are no feathers in the way, and the blood vessels underneath can flood or drain on demand. A turkey's face is a display screen. Fact 23. The bare head also solves a heat problem. Turkeys cannot sweat, and a featherless head and neck full of blood vessels is an efficient radiator. Fact 24. Males have a beard, a tuft of stiff, hair-like feathers hanging from the chest, which keeps growing through life and can reach 30 centimeters. Roughly 10 to 20% of hens grow one too. Fact 25. And spurs. Males grow sharp, bony spikes on the back of the legs, used in fights, which lengthen with age. Both beard and spurs are how a hunter estimates a bird's age at a glance. Now the part nobody expects from a bird whose name is an insult. Fact 26. Turkeys have somewhere around 30 distinct vocalizations, each with a different meaning. Assembly calls, alarm putts, contentment purrs, lost chick whistles, aggressive cutting, the yelp, the cluck, the kiki. Fact 27. Only males gobble, and only in season. It carries well over a kilometer through forest, and it is an advertisement. A male announcing his position to hens and his existence to rivals. Fact 28. A gobble can be triggered by almost any loud, sudden noise. Thunder, a car door, a barking dog, an owl. Hunters exploit this deliberately, using owl calls at dawn to make a silent tom give away where he is roosting. Fact 29. There are two sounds almost nobody has heard, because you have to be close. A displaying male produces a low drumming, a deep pulse you feel in the chest as much as here, preceded by a sharp intake of air called the spit. Spit and drum. It travels only a short distance, which tells you it is not an announcement to the forest. It is aimed at whoever is standing right in front of him. Fact 30. Turkeys recognize each other as individuals. A flock runs a stable pecking order established through fights, and once it is settled, birds remember their positions and stop testing them. Fact 31. That hierarchy is separate for each sex, and it is inherited socially. Male siblings that were dominant as poults tend to remain dominant as adults. Fact 32. And now the finding that changed how biologists talk about this bird. Male wild turkeys form courtship coalitions. 2 to 4 males of the same age who display together, follow the same group of hens, and drive off rival males and lone toms as a unit. Fact 33. Only one of them ever mates. The others assist and get nothing, which for decades looked like straightforward altruism, and nobody could confirm why. Fact 34. Alan Krakauer settled it with DNA. Studying wild turkeys at a reserve in Carmel Valley, California, and publishing in Nature in 2005, he showed the coalition partners are brothers or half-brothers. Fact 35. The arithmetic works out. A dominant male in a coalition fathered around 7 offspring across the study. A male going it alone fathered less than 1. Since brothers share half their genes, the helper gains more from his brother's 7 than he would from his own solitary attempt. Fact 36. That is kin selection, demonstrated in the field with paternity data. A subordinate turkey gives up his own breeding because, in strictly genetic terms, helping his brother is the better deal. This was the study that turned a textbook maybe into a confirmed case. Fact 37. Which means those 2 toms strutting side by side in a field are not rivals who tolerate each other. They are almost certainly brothers running a joint operation. Fact 38. Turkey hens are choosy in a way that makes all this necessary. She assesses the display, the snood, the color, the drumming, and then leaves if she is not convinced. Males provide nothing else. No territory, no food, no help with the young. So genes are the only thing on offer. Fact 39. Hens raise the poults entirely alone. She nests on the ground, lays around 10 to 14 eggs, and incubates for about 28 days. Fact 40. Poults leave the nest within a day of hatching and follow her immediately, which is why the nest is on the ground in the first place. Fact 41. They can fly up to a low branch at around 1 to 2 weeks old. Before that, they sleep on the ground under the hen's wings, and that is when most of them die. Fact 42. Nest and poult survival is brutal. Across many populations, only a small fraction of nests produce even one bird that reaches adulthood. Raccoons, snakes, foxes, crows, bobcats, and bad weather take the rest, and a hen may lose an entire clutch in one night. Fact 43. Hens whose broods fail often join up with other hens, and multiple families combine into large flocks with several adult females sharing lookout duty. Fact 44. Winter flocks segregate by sex. Hens and young birds in one group, adult toms in another, often gathered around a reliable food source and staying together until spring. Have you ever actually seen a wild turkey? Not the supermarket kind. A live one, in a field or a wood or, increasingly likely, in the middle of a suburb. Tell me in the comments where you were, because these birds are turning up in some very strange places. Now the name, and it may be the most confused word in the English language. Fact 45. The turkey is not from Turkey. It has never lived in Turkey. It is a bird of North and Central America, and it had never crossed the Atlantic before the 16th century. Fact 46. The confusion starts with a completely different bird. Guinea fowl from Africa were imported into Europe by merchants trading through the Ottoman Empire, and the English called them turkey cocks after the traders. Fact 47. Then Spanish ships brought a large American bird back to Europe. It looked similar enough. English speakers called it a turkey too, and the name stuck to the wrong animal permanently. Fact 48. Now watch what everyone else did. In Turkish, the bird is called hindi, meaning it comes from India. Fact 49. In French, dinde contracted from poule dinde, chicken of India. In Dutch, kalkoen from Calicut, an Indian port. In Russian, indyushka. Half of Europe decided this American bird was Indian because Columbus had convinced everyone that the Americas were Asia. Fact 50. It gets better. In Portuguese, it is peru. Named after a South American country, the bird does not come from either. In Malay, it is ayam belanda, Dutch chicken. In Khmer, French chicken. In parts of Arabic, Ethiopian or Roman chicken. Fact 51. Not one major language got it right. Every culture named this bird after wherever the ship seemed to have come from, and every single one of them was wrong. Fact 52. Even the scientific name is confused. Meleagris gallopavo. Meleagris was the Greek word for guinea fowl, and gallopavo is roughly chicken peacock. The taxonomy preserves the original mistake in Latin. Now the history, which runs the opposite way to what almost everyone assumes. Fact 53. Turkeys were domesticated by indigenous Americans at least 2,000 years ago, and probably twice, independently. Fact 54. In Mesoamerica, from around 300 years before the Common Era, Nahuatl-speaking peoples kept them and called them Quexolotl. In the southwest of what is now the United States, ancestral Puebloan peoples did it separately. Fact 55. Ancient mitochondrial DNA settled the second domestication. A study analyzing turkey bones and coprolites from dozens of archaeological sites found a distinct domestic lineage in the southwest that did not descend from the Mexican domestic bird. Two separate events, two separate lineages. Fact 56. And now the detail that reframes everything.
They were not primarily kept for meat. They were kept for feathers. Fact 57. Turkey feather blankets replaced rabbit fur blankets in the archaeological record. At roughly the same time, turkey bones start appearing. Thousands of feathers were wrapped around yucca cord to make a single blanket. Feathers were also used in ritual and for tools. Fact 58. Isotope analysis of ancient turkey bones shows the birds were eating maize, the same crop their keepers were growing. People were feeding their harvest to birds they mostly were not eating. Fact 59. It was the only animal domesticated by native peoples north of Mexico. Everything else came later with Europeans. Fact 60. Then the route home. Spanish ships took Mexican domestic turkeys to Europe in the early 1500s. Europe bred them for a century. Then English colonists carried those European turkeys back across the Atlantic to a continent already full of wild turkeys. Fact 61. Domestic turkeys arrived at Jamestown in 1607 and Massachusetts Bay in 1629, brought by settlers who did not know that the woods around them held far better birds. Fact 62, which makes almost every supermarket turkey a returning emigrant. Domesticated in Mexico, shipped to Europe, bred there, shipped back to America, and now sold as the most American meal of the year. Fact 63. The Thanksgiving connection is thinner than the story suggests. The one contemporary account of the 1621 harvest feast mentions that men were sent out for wild fowl, without saying which. Turkey became the fixed centerpiece far later, largely through the 19th century campaign that made Thanksgiving a national holiday. Fact 64. And now the Benjamin Franklin myth, which almost everyone repeats. Franklin did not propose the turkey as the national bird of the United States. Fact 65.
What actually happened? In January 1784, in a private letter to his daughter, he mocked the eagle on a society's insignia, saying the bald eagle was a bird of bad moral character that stole fish from better birds, and adding that the eagle on the badge looked more like a turkey anyway. Fact 66. He did call the turkey a much more respectable bird and a true original native of America, but it was a joke inside a letter about something else. He had no role in the seal by then, and his own actual proposal for the Great Seal contained no birds at all. Fact 67. The myth appears to have been cemented by a 1962 New Yorker cover showing the Great Seal with a turkey on it, and a song in the musical 1776. A cartoon became a historical fact within a generation. Now what we did to the farmed bird, and how quickly. Fact 68. In 1929, the average turkey in the United States weighed about 6 kilograms. By 2013, the average was around 14. The bird roughly tripled in weight in under a century. Fact 69. That did not happen through feed or drugs. It happened through selection, choosing the biggest-breasted birds to breed, generation after generation, exactly the way dog breeds were made.
Fact 70. In the 1930s, the broad-breasted bronze appeared. In the 1950s, it was crossed with the white Holland to produce the broad-breasted white, because white pin feathers leave no dark specks in the skin of the dressed carcass. Fact 71. That single variety now dominates commercial production worldwide. The turkey you buy is essentially one genetic product, chosen partly for how the corpse photographs. Fact 72. Modern birds reach slaughter weight in about 16 to 20 weeks. A wild turkey needs a year or more to reach a third of that. Fact 73. Their skeletons cannot always keep up. Rapid growth is linked to leg disorders and skeletal abnormalities, and many birds develop difficulty walking or standing well before slaughter age. Fact 74. The heart and lungs are sized for a smaller animal, so cardiac and respiratory failure are recognized problems in fast-growing lines. Fact 75. And the breast.
Selection for breast meat shortened the breastbone and enlarged the muscles so much that males cannot mount females. Since roughly the 1960s, commercial turkey reproduction has been done entirely by artificial insemination. Fact 76. Hold that up as a design outcome for a second. We have produced a bird that would be extinct within a single generation if people stopped physically making the next one. Chickens still mate. Ducks still mate. Pigs and cattle still mate. The commercial turkey is the one common farmed animal that has been bred past the point of reproducing itself. Fact 77. A turkey can live around 10 years, and heritage birds regularly do. Commercial birds are killed at 3 to 5 months. That is roughly 4% of a possible life, and the bird is still technically a juvenile when it dies. Fact 78. Around 45 to 46 million turkeys are eaten in the United States at Thanksgiving alone, with something in the region of 200 million produced there each year. Globally, the figure runs to several hundred million. Fact 79. Heritage breeds still exist. Bourbon Red, Narragansett, Royal Palm, Standard Bronze. The formal definition of a heritage turkey requires that it can mate naturally, live outdoors for years, and grow at a natural rate. In other words, the definition of a heritage turkey is a turkey that can still do what turkeys do. Fact 80. Several of those breeds nearly disappeared. The Beltsville small white, once produced at 19 million birds a year in the 1950s, was almost extinct by the 1970s because the market wanted bigger. Now the rain. I promised you this one. Fact 81. The story is that turkeys are so stupid they look up during a downpour, keep staring, and drown. It is probably the most repeated animal joke in the language. Fact 82. It does not happen. There is no documented case of a turkey drowning this way, and their nostrils are not built to funnel water in. Fact 83. But the behavior behind it is real. Some turkeys do tilt the head right back and hold it there, beak up, for 5 seconds to over a minute. Fact 84. Tom Savage, an animal scientist at Oregon State University, identified what it is in the early 1990s. It is a neurological disorder called tetanic torticolor spasms, caused by a sex-linked recessive gene found in certain domestic lines. Fact 85. So the most famous evidence for turkey stupidity turns out to be a genetic condition in a bird we bred ourselves. As Savage put it, it is a case study in how a misunderstood behavior becomes proof that an animal is stupid. Fact 86. The related claim that turkeys stare at the sky because they are dim also has an ordinary explanation.
With eyes on the sides of the head and poor depth perception, tilting is simply how a turkey focuses on something above it. Fact 87. There is a genuine problem behind the folklore, though. Poults are very vulnerable to cold and wet, and can die of hypothermia in prolonged rain. Chicks really do die in storms, just not from drowning while stargazing. Fact 88. Turkeys can also swim. They tuck the wings in, spread the tail, and paddle. Wild turkeys cross rivers this way. Fact 89. One more oddity. Turkey eggs have been documented developing without any male contribution at all. Parthenogenesis. It was studied extensively at a U.S. research station in the 1950s and 1960s, where selected lines produced unfertilized eggs that developed, and a small number of them hatched into viable poults, all of them male. Now the conservation story, which is genuinely one of the best there is. Fact 90. The wild turkey nearly vanished. Between overhunting and the felling of the eastern forests, the North American population was down to somewhere around 30,000 birds by the early 20th century. Fact 91. Put that number against something familiar. That is fewer birds than there are African elephants today. By 1920, the wild turkey had disappeared entirely from 18 of the 39 states it had originally occupied. Fact 92. The first rescue attempt failed completely. For roughly 2 decades, agencies bred turkeys in pens and released them into the woods. Pen-raised birds have no idea how to avoid a predator, find food, or pick a roost, and they died almost immediately. That approach cost the recovery the better part of 20 years. Fact 93. What finally worked was moving wild birds. In 1951, a biologist named Herman Holbrook adapted a cannon-fired net, originally built for waterfowl, to capture whole wild flocks intact and relocate them. Fact 94. That single technical fix changed everything. Trap and transfer, repeated across state after state for decades, rebuilt the population from the surviving wild pockets rather than from captivity. Fact 95. It was funded by hunters. The Pittman-Robertson Act of 1937 placed a federal excise tax on guns and ammunition and channeled it into wildlife restoration. And the National Wild Turkey Federation, founded in 1973, drove much of the rest. Fact 96. The Great Depression helped, accidentally. Abandoned farmland across the east grew back into scrub and woodland, and that regrowing forest was exactly the habitat the birds needed. Fact 97. From roughly 30,000 birds to about 7 million by the early 2000s, present in every state except Alaska, plus Canada and Mexico. It is one of the largest wildlife recoveries ever achieved. Fact 98. Then the birds did something nobody planned for. They moved into towns. Wild turkeys now walk through suburbs across America, hold up traffic, roost on cars, and occasionally chase people down the street. A species that had been shot out of existence across half a continent a century earlier is now a municipal nuisance in Massachusetts. Fact 99. And then the story turned again. Since around 2010, populations have been falling across much of the range, with the sharpest declines in parts of the southeast. One survey found 8 of 30 states reporting losses over a 5-year period. Habitat loss looks like the leading explanation, alongside poor nest and poult survival. The comeback is not finished, and it is no longer heading in one direction. Fact 100. So we have 2 turkeys. One was reduced to 30,000 birds and brought back to 7 million by people who cared enough to spend a century on it. The other we rebuilt from the inside out until it could not reproduce, could not fly, and often could not stand, and we made 300 million of those a year while calling the species a byword for stupidity. The wild one is proof of what we can do when we try. The other one is proof of what we do when nobody is watching. Now, the practical part, because this bird shows up in a couple of ways you might actually encounter. If a wild turkey acts aggressive toward you, and in suburbs this now happens, do not back away. Turkeys read retreat as submission, and a bird that decides it outranks you will keep doing it. Stand your ground, make yourself large, be loud. Wildlife agencies say the same thing, and they also say the underlying cause is almost always somebody feeding them. If you keep them, the domestic ones are more fragile than chickens as chicks and need higher protein feed, and the fast-growing commercial breeds should not be kept as long-lived pets. Their bodies are not built for it. A heritage breed is the one that will still be walking comfortably in year 3. And if you buy one, the labels mean specific things. Heritage has a real definition and involves a bird that mated naturally and grew slowly. Free range, in most jurisdictions, means far less than people assume. So, what is a turkey? It is a large ground bird that sees ultraviolet, sleeps in trees, runs at 40 kilometers an hour, and talks in 30 different sounds. Its brothers form partnerships to court females, and the ones who never get to breed do it anyway, because the genetics quietly pay off. Its face is a color display, and its snood is an honest advertisement of its immune system.
It was domesticated twice, on its own continent, mostly for feathers, by people who fed it their own maize. And then it became a punchline. Not because of anything it did, but because we bred a version so heavy it could not stand, watched it fail to behave like an animal, and drew conclusions about the species. The rain story is the perfect miniature of that. A genetic disorder in our own farm lines turned into a joke about how stupid the bird is. The wild ones are still out there, doing all of it. Most people have simply never looked at one properly, which is fair enough, because we mostly meet this animal already dead and upside down in a roasting tin. Final question, and be honest with me.
Which animal have you spent your whole life assuming was stupid, without ever once checking? Name it underneath. That list is where the next few videos are coming from, and I suspect at least one of yours will surprise both of us. And if you want animals handled this way, real studies, awkward parts included, subscribe. Next time, an animal that everyone is frightened of for completely the wrong reason.